What's the biggest adult temper tantrum you've ever witnessed? Story 1. When I was 16, I worked at McDonald's during the Beanie Babies craze. A woman came in with her 2 small children, ordered some Happy Meals, and asked for a specific Beanie Baby. When she found out we didn't have it, she completely flipped out. She called us every name in the book, right in front of her kids and everyone else's kids. She was a real Meena baby. Story 2. One time I was in Target trying to return something, so I was in the customer service line. A lady a couple of people ahead of me was arguing with an employee about a coupon she was trying to use. Evidently, this had been going on for a while before I arrived, as the people in front of me looked visibly irritated and antsy. Meanwhile, the woman's husband was standing with their 2 kids right by the main entrance. It was about 9 p.m., and both kids were in their pajamas, so were the adults actually. One of the kids was literally screaming bloody murder the entire time, and every so often the woman would turn from the argument to yell at the kid to shut up. She wasn't backing down about the coupon, and neither was the employee. It got so bad that both people in front of me gave up and left. I wanted to do the same, but I really needed to return my item and didn't want to come back another time. By the time I was next in line, I could hear everything clearly. The woman was freaking out, telling the employee she'd get her fired, getting inches from her face, yelling. Just completely unhinged behavior for an adult. The employee, bless her, stayed calm and repeated that the coupon couldn't be honored. The whole time I assumed the coupon must have been for some big discount, but then I heard the woman scream, "I'm not paying 24 cents extra." 24 cents. She had spent 45 minutes embarrassing herself and keeping her exhausted kids awake over 24 cents. I'll never understand some people. Huge respect to that employee. I'd have needed a long shower and a few drinks after that interaction. Story 3. I was at the pharmacy around 8 p.m., waiting in line behind an older woman. The pharmacist told her she'd have to pick up her prescription tomorrow at 10 a.m. because this location didn't carry that particular medication. The exchange went like this. "Lady, I'll wait." Pharmacist: "No, ma'am, we physically don't have it in this store. You have to come back tomorrow at 10 a.m. Lady, let me speak to the manager." Pharmacist: "I am the manager. I'm the pharmacist, and this is my store. I'm telling you, we do not have this medication right now. Lady, can you just give me 1 pill, and I'll get the rest tomorrow?" Pharmacist: "Ma'am, we don't have any of the pills here." Lady: "What if I pay you for the cost of that 1 pill right now, and I get the rest tomorrow?" Pharmacist: "Ma'am, I can't give you 1 pill because we have 0 pills in this store. You'll be fine until tomorrow at 10 a.m., I promise." That's when she went completely off the rails. She started throwing items off the shelves onto the floor, stomping on them, and screaming about how she would sue the pharmacy and had never seen such terrible customer service in her life. She even kicked the partition between her and the pharmacist, threatening to go behind the counter and fill the prescription herself. It didn't even seem like she was upset about the medication. It was more about not getting her way and not wanting to come back. The pharmacist called a clerk for help, and the whole time she was grabbing things and throwing them down in a fit of rage. Eventually she was escorted out, but we could still hear her screaming outside. Story 4. When I worked in the bakery at Whole Foods, we had a customer who kept asking us to make banana muffins with a lot of pecans on top for her, but only a few at a time, like 2 or 3. Normally it was a request we could handle, but there were some complications, like the fact that if she didn't pick them up, we couldn't sell them to anyone else because pecans weren't listed in the official ingredients. The real problems started when she would call us while already on her way to the store, expecting the muffins to be ready when she arrived. She lived about 20 minutes away, but the muffins took 45 minutes to bake. Even if she had called an hour ahead, our production schedule was tight, and someone would have to stop what they were doing to handle this one special order. She got mad that we couldn't magically produce them in 20 minutes. Because, chemistry. I was the supervisor on duty most of the time she called, so she'd keep me on the phone for 15 minutes, ranting about how the customer is always right, even though she was objectively wrong. Then she insisted we should just make her special muffins all the time so they'd always be ready for her. I explained that we could be heavily fined by food inspectors if we did that, which only made her angrier, because apparently screw the system. Eventually, my team leader told us we had to stand firm and require her to place special orders at least 2 days in advance, like everyone else. When we informed her, she became sputtering and furious, yelling things like, How am I supposed to know when I'm going to want them? We just shrugged and said, "Management's orders, sorry." She grudgingly went along with it for a few days, sending her poor mother to pick up the muffins instead. Her mom always looked so apologetic. Finally, though, the woman stormed in herself to berate us about how rude, inconsiderate, and awful we had been to her. She demanded to speak to the store manager, who already knew all about the infamous banana nut saga. He escorted her outside and told her she was banned from the store. Later, we found out she had also been banned from the 3 nearest Whole Foods locations for the exact same behavior. Story 5. Not the biggest tantrum, but one that comes to mind was at a job I had years ago. All of us, except for one person, had to do this really annoying group task involving endless trips to a laundromat on the hottest day of the year. We were academic counselors for a summer program, and since the college's machines had broken, we had to walk groups of about 30 students a mile away to do laundry because the kids were starting to stink. The only one exempt was the suck-up who constantly kissed the top supervisor's ass. We all assumed she got out of it because of that. But honestly, I think the supervisor just forgot to assign her anything since she was so useless. On our 3rd trip back, she was literally lounging in the lobby with her feet up on a chair, doing absolutely nothing. The supervisor walked by, noticed her, seemed to have a moment of realization, and told her to grab a group and start making the same laundry trips the rest of us had been doing. She went nuts, not screaming, but whining loudly and rapidly, repeating, "That's not fair. This isn't fair," over and over again. The fact that she genuinely thought it wasn't fair was what infuriated me most. Then, in a fit of frustration over being asked to do the exact same work as everyone else, she punched a hole in the lobby wall. 2 days later, the main supervisor was fired, and the assistant supervisor, the one this lazy worker had been bad-mouthing to try to climb the ladder, was promoted to top supervisor. Let's just say things did not end well for the lazy one. LMAO. Story 6. For years ago, I worked at Target. Any retail job will expose you to an endless number of adult temper tantrums. One day, a well-dressed man in his mid-40s came through my line with his 2 young sons, maybe 8 and 11, and was buying lighters. As my current customer finished, I informed the man that I would need his ID to complete the purchase. He laughed in frustration and said, "Do I look like I'm under 18 fucking years old?" I replied, "I believe you're over 18, sir, but when I scan the lighters, the system requires an ID. If you don't have one, I'll need to call my manager to put in a code. I'm just trying to make things as easy as possible for you." He called me a fucking idiot, threw the lighters at me, and stormed off. As he passed, my current customer said, "Stop being such an asshole." The man immediately turned around and got in his face, shouting while my customer stayed calm. I'm pretty sure this guy did this often, because his kids were tugging on his clothes, begging him to stop. Another time, a woman came in with 2 carts completely full. She was an extreme couponer and apparently resold the products on Facebook. She had calculated everything so that after all the discounts, she would get about $280 worth of items, and we would owe her 50 cents. The problem was that the register system simply doesn't allow cash payouts. I offered to zero out her balance, but explained I couldn't give her money. She demanded to speak to my manager. When my manager arrived, the woman accused me of stealing from her, then explained the situation. My manager backed me up and confirmed what I'd said. The woman then shouted, "Then you can go fuck yourself," tipped over her entire cart, and left. Story 7. I'm in retail, so I witnessed my fair share of adult temper tantrums, but ever since I became a manager it's 10 times worse because now I'm the one who gets called up to deal with them. A few weeks ago, a woman wanted to return a curling iron that had clearly been used for years and wasn't even a brand my store sold. So she obviously had no receipt or original packaging, meaning it wasn't eligible for return anyway. When I told her this, politely of course, she puffed up and asked to speak to the manager. "Okay, I'm a manager, but the store's general manager will be here tomorrow. If you'd like, leave your number and she can call you." Nope, not acceptable. She wanted cash today. Even if I somehow could accept the return, my system literally won't let me. It would be store credit only, never cash. I told her this and she flipped the fuck out, screamed at me, literally, said she was calling the cops, corporate, the Better Business Bureau, and the Attorney General. What exactly they would do, I have no idea. Called me a cunt and a whore, and then told me karma was going to bite me in the ass and that I was going to have a stillborn baby, which was especially awful to hear because I'm currently 9 months pregnant. All because she couldn't return her used curling iron for meth money. I had no doubt she was on some sort of substance, and the significant amount of teeth missing from her mouth tipped me off that it was probably meth she was after. And you obviously can't pay your dealer in store credit. Story 8. Back when I worked at a popular auto parts store, a couple pulled up in a beat-up old Lincoln pulling a box trailer that was absolutely covered in Christian bumper stickers and Bible verses. That was my first warning that something was going to go wrong. The lady and her husband came in looking for a window motor for the driver's side door of their Lincoln. Now, this chain usually has parts for most vehicles. It's rare that we flat out can't get something. And if we don't have it in store, we can usually get it shipped within a day or overnight, depending on when the order is placed. But this woman lost it. We told her we couldn't get the part that very second for her crappy 1980-something Lincoln, and she had a full meltdown. She started calling us idiots and assholes. At that point, our commercial manager came out from behind the counter and politely told her that she was not going to speak to us that way. He had this habit of bobbing his head when he got angry while talking. The woman immediately shot back that he must bob his head like that on his boyfriend's dick at night. Customers were staring, some even laughing. The manager went to the back to figure something out. Meanwhile, the woman asked if we had anything to sit on. AutoZone doesn't have chairs for employees, let alone customers, so she flipped over a stack of those small plastic hand baskets you find in grocery stores and sat on them. The whole time, she was barking orders at her husband, who looked like a beaten-down dog, just grateful she wasn't yelling at him directly. Finally, the manager came back out and told her that another store in town had the part in stock if she wanted to drive there. After a few more minutes of attitude, she agreed and left. But our commercial manager wasn't finished. He'd been with the company for about 15 years and knew every other store manager in town. He immediately started calling around to all of them and said, "If this woman comes in looking for that part, you don't have it." Story 9. I once worked at Blockbuster and have a few stories. There was a movie gallery right across the street, and it was surprisingly common for people to drop their movies into the wrong return box. So every night before closing, we'd meet outside and swap. It was also well known that some employees at both stores would rifle through the movies and keep one if they wanted it. I don't condone it. It's stealing, but technically Movie Gallery wasn't responsible for Blockbuster's inventory and vice versa, so I get how people justified it. One day, a woman came into my store and said, "I dropped my Movie Gallery movie off here a few weeks ago, and they said they never got it. Now I'm getting charged." I told her I'd check our stacks, but of course it wasn't there. She flipped out, accused me personally of stealing it, and made a huge scene. She even pointed her finger in my face and called me a movie thief. When she paused, I just said, "Ma'am, I work at a Blockbuster. Why on earth would I need to steal a movie?" She stormed out. The second story I didn't witness directly, but dealt with the aftermath. Some woman came in on a Sunday, clearly fresh from church, and rented The Last Temptation of Christ. She was going on about how great it was to see a movie about Jesus. I tried to warn her it wasn't what she thought, but of course, I'm just the Blockbuster guy, so she ignored me. The next morning when I opened the store, I found a smashed DVD case and broken disc under the night drop, along with a note that said something like "unchristian filth." Since it was obvious the disc had been destroyed on purpose, she was charged the full replacement cost, about $60 because it was a special edition. She wasn't happy about that bill. The third story happened the next time I saw a church lady. She brought her grandkids in and picked up Pirates, a pirate-themed softcore porn movie. I was honestly shocked Blockbuster carried it, but I guess it had just enough of a plot to pass. She thought it was Pirates of the Caribbean and was annoyed we didn't have more copies of such a big film. I tried to explain it wasn't the Disney movie and that it was definitely not for kids. She cut me off, accusing me of being condescending and saying I was always trying to talk her out of movies. I reminded her that the last time she ignored me, it cost her $60, and that I was just trying to do my job. But ultimately, if she wanted that movie for her grandkids, I couldn't stop her. She rented it and left. My shift ended soon after, and later that evening I got a call from my manager. "Hey, did you rent Pirates to someone today?" I just started laughing and said yes, adding that I had tried to explain what it was, but she refused to listen. Apparently, she threw it on for a group of 6 to 10-year-olds at her party, and they got about 20 minutes into it before anyone realized what was happening. From what I was told, things got so bad they almost had to call the police when she returned to the store. By that point, I had already been to war. I'd served in the Marines, deployed to Iraq, and had only been home about 4 months before starting at Blockbuster. Honestly, that job was way more stressful than deploying. Story 10. When I was in my late teens, early 20s, I worked at Walmart. Aside from being the worst company I've ever worked for, the middle-aged stay-at-home mom types were the absolute worst customers I ever encountered. I usually ran the customer service desk, handling returns, exchanges, and phone calls. Our store had a fish department, which not all locations did, where you could buy basic live fish, goldfish, guppies, bettas, things like that. One woman bought about 5 little goldfish, the 30-cent kind that all look the same, so if one dies you can just replace it without your kid noticing. Our return policy was that if the fish died within a certain time frame, you could bring them back with a receipt for an exchange or refund. This woman came in one day with a Ziploc bag of dead goldfish. I asked for her receipt, and she said she didn't have it. I politely explained that without the receipt, I couldn't process a refund or exchange. She absolutely lost it, screaming at me like she was on something, going on about defective fish, refusing to let me call my customer service manager. I was barely an adult at the time, full of anxiety, basically panicking and apologizing over and over. After about 10 minutes of her screaming at me while a line formed, my CSM finally noticed and came over. She told the woman the same thing, receipt required. The woman still wouldn't calm down, so the store manager, a horrible man named M that everyone hated, showed up. We explained the situation, and M immediately apologized to the woman and publicly chewed me out for not doing the refund, even though it was his rule that we couldn't process returns without a receipt. The woman gave me this smug, self-satisfied look, got her $3 back, and I thought that was the end of it. But nope. She unzipped the bag of dead goldfish and flung it at me. Yep, a 40-something-year-old woman threw stinking, dead fish at a teenager just doing her job. I was furious and humiliated, turning red from anger, and my CSM had to drag me away and send me home for the day because I was so upset. The next day, I came in and found that M had written me up for being rude to a customer. Fuck Walmart. Bonus story about how awful Walmart was as an employer. I was 21 and planning my wedding for the 4th of July. Back in February, I requested that entire week off, and my request was approved, signed by M himself. The week before the wedding, I was still scheduled to work. I showed him my approved form, and he told me if I didn't show up, I'd face discipline up to termination. I obviously didn't cancel my wedding. When I came back, they gave me what they called a D-Day. Basically, they send you home and make you write an essay about why you like working at Walmart, why you want to keep your job, and how you'll improve as an employee. They scheduled my D-Day right before my 2 regular days off, meaning I lost 3 days' pay. Instead of writing their stupid essay, I went down the street and applied at Target, got hired the next day, and quit. My letter was just a few sentences saying I was done and that I hoped M was happy losing one of the only employees who never called out or was late. I had a nice 2-week break before starting at Target, which was at least somewhat better. Last I heard, M was fired a few years later for sexual harassment. Story 11. I used to work the tech bench at Best Buy back in their glory days, pre-Geek Squad, which in our store was located right at the front next to customer service. In the late 90s, computers were the hottest thing around. Every Sunday when the new ad dropped, we'd have lines of people, sometimes hundreds, waiting for the doors to open. The store tried to stock enough of the sale items, but there was no way to prepare for a mob rushing in for the latest Pentium 2-400. Doors opened at 11 a.m., people flooded in, and the hot items were gone almost instantly. If you weren't at the front of the line, you weren't getting one. After about 2 hours of chaos, things usually calmed down. One Sunday around 3 p.m., a guy strolled in, showed me the ad, and asked for that week's computer deal. I told him he was too late, they sold out hours ago, but directed him to the sales team so they could issue a rain check. He left with one. 15 minutes later, he came back to customer service, rain check in hand, and started talking to a cashier. I couldn't hear the conversation, but he looked agitated. Eventually, the store manager came over. At first, he tried to reason with the guy, explaining that hundreds of people had been waiting at the door at opening, The computers had sold out fast, and that the rain check guaranteed him the sale price when new stock came in. He even offered to help him find a comparable model. That's when the guy completely lost it. He turned to the store and started screaming at the top of his lungs. Bait and switch. Bait and switch. Bait and switch. He just kept going, over and over, not listening to anyone. Customers started gathering to watch, and new shoppers walking in were immediately greeted by a grown man screaming like a lunatic. The manager went from calm to fed up and started shouting back, telling him he was an embarrassment and that adults don't behave like this. The guy ignored him, still screaming. Bait and switch. Bait and switch. Bait and switch. Finally, the manager told him if he didn't leave immediately, he'd call the police. He picked up the phone and started dialing. That finally got the guy moving toward the exit, but he didn't stop yelling. He screamed bait and switch all the way to his car, got in, and drove off. Never saw him again. Some say he's still screaming to this day. But don't let this story distract you from the fact that later that night, the Undertaker threw mankind off hell in a cell, sending him plummeting 16 feet through an announcer's table. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe, activate the notification bell, and share a similar story or anything you'd like to say in the comments. See you next time.